The field goal block team off to get some pass rushers back on there. Here we go. Got to get to the 8. He's going to take off and run. Mendoza weaves his way first and goal, diving toward the end zone. Touchdown! That's why he won the Heisman Trophy.
Great call by Chris Fowler last night. National championship game, Hard Rock in Miami. Big gamble, great play call, great play execution, and then just pure will to get into the end zone for the Heisman Trophy winner. The best player in the country took a beating last night, but made the biggest plays of the game when Indiana needed him to. This amazing sports story, Indiana, a basketball school, going 16-0 and winning a national championship, ended the way the movie makers wanted it to end. Indiana, a national champion in football. Crazy. Good morning. As is the weather this coming weekend. Doug Kammerer will join me at 11 a.m. I'm sure many of you have looked at your weather apps. You've seen social media going nuts over this big storm heading our way. And yeah, like usually these weather apps, when they show outrageous snow totals, they're complete and utter fabrication. But there's a lot of indicators out there that suggest we are going to certainly get snow. The issue is how much. Will it be, a little bit, a medium amount, or something historic? Doug will jump on with us at 11 a.m. It's going to be cold, I will tell you that. One of the colder snowstorms we've had in a while if we end up getting the snowstorm on Saturday and Sunday. Looking a little bit more like later Saturday, all day Sunday, maybe even into Monday of next week. These things do change. All of these weather models, including the AI weather models that are now a big deal, they change a lot within a few days. So it might be sunny and 40 by the time we get to tomorrow in terms of the forecast. But we'll get Doug Kammerer. He is as good as it gets, and he's into this thing. We were talking yesterday for about 20 minutes. This one has a chance to be a big one. Kammerer at 11. Trying to get Stanford Steve on the show. We'll see if he's back from Miami to get him to talk about last night's national championship game, which was a really good game. Like, I thought it was very interesting. If you guys were watching the game, listening to Fowler and Herb Street call the game, and then I was watching halftime with my guy Scott and the group that they had there, and they all sort of thought that the first half was dominated by Indiana. And I didn't feel that way. I thought Miami's defense was outstanding. It was the penalties that really hurt them. Now, offensively, they didn't do much at all in the first half. And Indiana's defense was clearly dominating the line of scrimmage in the first half against Miami's offensive line. But I thought Miami's defense from start to finish was pretty damn vicious and really was a big part of why they were in the game. I thought the game was a really good game. I didn't think it was slow in the first half at 10-0. I thought it was pretty compelling with some of the big third downs, with some of the big plays. Indiana had the one opportunity and the one drive where they put up a touchdown. Miami really didn't sniff scoring until the very end of the first half, and they missed a field goal. So it was 10-0 at halftime, which was great for those of us that had the under. It didn't come through, the under. Ultimately, Miami plus the points did. Those were my two selections last night. Hopefully, it's probably better if you didn't get them because you would have lost juice. But I had the under, which lost. I had Miami plus the points, which won. 3-1 weekend. Good bounce back weekend after last weekend's misery with the smell test. But the second half, man, what a football game. The hitting was fierce. The big plays were there. None bigger than the blocked punt. I think there were two plays in this game that were outrageously significant to the outcome, and they're typically not when they happen in the third quarter or early in the fourth quarter. But at the end of the third quarter, the play in which Malachi Toney fielded a punt at his own 3-yard line was a massive mistake. I know that he is a game breaker supreme, but fielding that punt deep down in his own at his own 3-yard line was a massive mistake. He got it out to the 7. That ball should have been in the end zone and at the 20. And Miami starting deep in their own territory, and field position was huge in this game, especially the second half. They went 3 and out with really a dropped opportunity on 2nd and 7. And then came the blocked punt. And it went from 10-7 with Miami's defense really starting to take over the game. Indiana in the second half had gone punt, punt, punt. Miami had scored the touchdown, and they had the ball back for a second time after they drew within 3 at 10-7. And that was a big, big mistake by Tony, fielding that punt inside his own 5-yard line. And it led to ultimately punting from deep in their own territory, having it blocked, and Indiana scored. Miami showed huge guts. Man, we've had some fourth quarter, drama in postseason NFL and in college football. I mean, the number of points that have been scored in the fourth quarters of these games over the last few weeks. And we had basically 14-10. Miami went touchdown drive of 81 yards, touchdown drive of 91 yards. In between that was an Indiana touchdown drive of 75 yards. And then at 24-21, with Indiana driving, a couple of huge back shoulder throws. My God, is Becker good? What throws on those back shoulder throws. And then on that 4th down and 4 at the Miami 17-yard line, a field goal would have made it 20-14. And it looked like Signetti was going to kick the field goal. He called a timeout, reconsidered, and they had a play. He talked about they had the quarterback draw. They had it blocked up specifically in a way in which nobody could have scouted on tape, but they needed the defensive look that they got, and he guessed during that timeout they were going to get that defensive look, that defensive structure is the way he described it. And Mendoza, if you saw it, was blocked up to go for him to cut back, and they created that cutback lane. The safety made a terrible, attempt at tackling, and then it was pure will that got him in the end zone. But it wasn't over. The game was not over at that point. At 24-14, Miami answered with a ridiculous 91-yard drive, and then they held for a field goal, and they had the ball. And man, Carson Beck, and I talked to you guys about this after the Ole Miss game, he's been somebody I've been rooting for all year long. Denton and I have had multiple conversations about Carson Beck. I thought at Georgia he was a pro. I thought early in the season he's going to be a first-round pick. I'm going to be wrong about Beck from that standpoint. And there's a lot about Beck that perhaps we don't know, the intangible stuff, although that was really put to bed and put to rest last night by Reese Davis, who said multiple times a lot of the stuff in the sport that's been said about Carson Beck and the kind of teammate he is, et cetera, has been wrong, and that they love him at Miami, and he is the hardest worker they have. And I thought when they overcame a delay a game on 1st and 10, and then the 2nd and 15 throw, a 2nd and 15 roughing the passer. He got dinged up on that last drive. He was down for about 20 seconds. I thought they might pull him out of the game for a concussion review. He stayed in the game, and then on a 1st and 10 at the Indiana 47, he threw into double coverage. It looked like he made one of those mistakes that Carson Beck has made during his career, and it was really a shame for the game to end that way. I was rooting big time for Miami. I was. I kind of liked them from the beginning of this season. I thought that they were an excellent football team. They stumbled, stubbed their toe twice during the regular season, but Indiana was the better team last night, and they pulled off 16-0. The first 16-0 season since Yale did it in 1894. They were led that year by Harvey Butterworth, for what it's worth. Signetti is a story, man. Indiana, a story. Is it repeatable in a lot of spots in this world of transfer portal and NIL and salary cap? It is, especially in the salary cap era where, your programs are splitting up $20.5 million for an athletic department where in almost every case, 75 to 85% of those dollars are going to football. And then you have NIL on top of that. You still need a really good coach, though. You still need a good coach almost anywhere you are, because at an Indiana, you're not going to overwhelm people with talent. Even now, it may change, but if you want to become the next Indiana, yeah, you can have the big budget, but you got to be able to attract those players, and then you got to have somebody to coach them up. And this dude, he is a bit of a weird, odd guy, but wow, he has grown on me during the course of the year. He can just flat out coach. I did think it was interesting, his halftime going out into the locker room up 10-0, where he just ripped the officiating. Said there were 3 personal foul calls that should have been called that weren't against his quarterback. He was certainly right about one call. There was a vicious headshot that bloodied up Mendoza in the first half as Miami just kept coming after him and kept hitting him. I thought that one was a clear 15-yard penalty that was missed. There was a zone read where they took a big shot at him as well. Sometimes that's legal. You don't know if the quarterback has it or not on a zone read. But he took that halftime interview with, I think it was Holly. It may have been the other reporter, forget her name. But he said not real happy with them missing 3 personal fouls on the quarterback. But if anybody wondered whether or not this guy could take a pounding and still deliver, he did it last night. He was really, really sensational in the game. He ended up 16 of 27 for 186 tough yards. But how about the 4th and 4 QB draw? That's the play that they'll look back on in Indiana sports history. Mark Cuban will have that thing teed up every year as he helps them try to attract even better players. But ultimately, this was a game that was, almost yardage-wise dead even. I mean, Miami ended up with more yards in the game. 3rd down was huge for them. They were 0 for their first 9, but 3 for their last 3, which was huge, including a 4th down conversion they had as well. That was early in the game, and man, that was a big risk. They took it and won. The one turnover in a pretty clean football game came on the final drive. Indiana national champion. Wow, man, what a story. I'll tell you what, I love college football. This was an exciting season. We had a really good playoff. Last year, not so much. Last year, too many blowouts, especially in that first round. But we had great games, starting with, that first weekend, that Miami, Texas A&M game, 10-3 was insane. The Alabama going on the road in Norman in an electric atmosphere and winning 34-24. How about James Madison putting up 34 in Eugene? Then that second weekend included that ridiculous Ole Miss Georgia game. Just unbelievable. Trinidad Chambliss. The Miami Ohio State game was so good. Then in the semis, we had Ole Miss Miami, which may have been the game if Ole Miss Georgia wasn't, of the entire tournament. And then we had an excellent national championship game last night, 27-21. It's funny about Indiana. They looked so unbeatable, so dominant in their wins over Alabama and Oregon. There was a thought that they're going to roll. I mean, they were an 8-point favorite over Miami. 8. It was 9.5 last week. Remember, Max? Came back down to 8. There were a lot of 7.5s at kickoff as well. And I think there was a lot of feeling that there's just nobody that can touch this team. But if you recall, they were in a real tussle with Ohio State, a great defensive team in the Big Ten title game. And they were so lucky to survive Penn State, as Penn State played better later in the year after, firing James Franklin and having the tumultuous season that they had. But Indiana, wow, 16-0. I certainly would not historically put this team with the team that I think in certainly recent memory, the 2019 LSU team was just ridiculous. That's the best college football team of certainly the last 20 or so years. Indiana was really good. They were also, there at the very end in trouble of potentially losing a 28-27 game, whereas LSU just kicked everybody's behind on the way to a national championship with Joe Burrow and company. But Indiana was really, really good. Fun national championship game. Hoping to get my buddy Stanford Steve on the show. We'll see if we can get that done. They're all coming back from Florida, I think, this morning. What did you think, Max?
It was a great game, man. Like Mendoza, he's such an interesting character, and the grit that he's displayed throughout this playoffs, and especially on that touchdown run where he would simply not be denied getting into that end zone. Indiana has been such a really, really fun season, and I really am. I'm super excited for all my friends who have went to Indiana. I know a couple people who went there, and it's just they were so apathetic about football not very long ago. You see pictures of people that people are posting of Indiana's opening game from maybe 2-3 seasons ago, and there is not a soul. All of those people deserve to be in that building tonight, and I hope that they have not slept since the final whistle blew, because I'm thrilled for Indiana.
Indiana, and who knew this? Maybe some of you did. I didn't until after they won their semifinal game. Has the largest worldwide alum base of any university.
I had no idea until we started this playoffs.
I had no idea. It's amazing.
The
all too early look ahead to 2026. The preseason number one team in the country, Indiana. Why? Because they are losing Mendoza. They're losing Surratt, the receiver. They're losing Hemby, the Maryland transfer running back who was so good. But they got Josh Hoover, who played very well at TCU this year, to transfer. And they have several others that they have attracted in the portal. And the ESPN all too early 2026 top 25 has Indiana on top at number 1, Texas at number 2, with Arch Manning coming back to college, Notre Dame at number 3, Georgia at 4. And even though Dante Moore is heading back to Oregon, the Ducks are preseason just number 5 in the country. Man, the college football season is quite the sprint. And it takes a while once we get this playoff started, because the playoffs started about a month ago to the day. I think it was December 20th or 19th that it started. And a month later is the national championship game. I saw somebody tweet out that next year's national championship game is January 25th. I would just say this: it's still much better than the way it used to be, where you would have, the championship games in the conference setting that first weekend in December. And then before the 4-team playoff, you'd have to wait a month plus. I mean, out of sight, out of mind in those days. And even with the 4-team playoff, you had to wait another 3.5, 4 weeks before you got the semifinal games, out of sight, out of mind. At least now, after championship weekend, which is that first, weekend in December following the last weekend of the regular season, Thanksgiving weekend, at least the first set of playoff games in a 12-team field comes 10 or 11 days later, 12 days later. Because they start that thing on a Friday night. So it would be 13 days technically. So it's, you get to it much faster, and then you've got a pretty good pace here. We had to wait all of 9 days, 10 days for the national, I guess 9 days, because the semifinal games were New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. That was a Thursday and Friday. So we had to wait about 11 days for the national championship game. Next year, though, January 25th. At some point, man, 16-team field, more likely than not, 18-game NFL regular season. It'll be January 20th, 2 or 3 years from now, and we'll just be starting the NFL playoffs. And the college playoff will be basically gearing up for the semifinal games. That's okay with me. It's okay with me. And I know people will say, well, what about all the injuries and Bo Nix is out and Zach Charbonnet is out? Well, increase the roster sizes. You don't get fewer people to watch when your best players aren't playing. That was proven that year that Brady was injured and was out, and New England still was 11-5, and the NFL ratings on television went up. Give me more product, because I'll tell you what, right now, when that game ended last night, 3 football games left in the 2025-2026 football season. 3. 2 on Sunday and the Super Bowl. And then that's it, boys and girls. That's it. You'll have to wait another 6 months before you see actual football on TV in the preseason, and really 7 months until you get it full stop with the NFL in September. College starts, a week or two earlier. But I like it. I like the rhythm of it, and I hate when it ends. We do have 2 championship games coming up, though, this coming weekend, but not before, in terms of looking ahead, not before we look back. The 4 divisional round playoff games were pretty compelling. There was a lot of really good football. There was a lot of really bad football. There was plenty of drama. There was plenty of controversy. And there was a big-time injury that will certainly impact one of the 2 championship games. We'll get to those 4 games and recap when we come back. I'll also give you the news that Washington was reported about Washington yesterday and their offensive line coaching situation. All of that is next. And yes, Doug Kammerer coming up at 11 a.m. with the latest on what I'm sure most of you have heard about, and that is the storm this weekend. How bad will it be? Or for some of us, how good will it be? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
The biggest plays and clutch moments.
Oh, look out! Touchdown! A miracle!
It's time to go around the NFL.
Coming after him all out.
They pick it up, and they go deep down the field, and the pass is caught. No, it's McMillan has the football. How about that?
So that was, I think, the most controversial moment of the weekend. That was the first game of the weekend, the first of 2 overtime games on divisional round weekend. There were a list of players who I thought were outstanding. There was certainly one player who was not. And there was a big injury to go along with, some good, compelling drama, especially in the first game and the last game. So, look, I'm going to get to that play. That play was certainly the play in which people will be talking about forever in Buffalo in particular. The Cooks, Jaquan McMillan play that ended up in a Jaquan McMillan interception. I'm not gonna bury the lead. Yeah, I'm gonna bury the lead. I'm gonna hold off on letting you know how I feel about the play. Let's talk about that game. Let's go in chronological order. We'll go Buffalo, Denver first, Seattle, San Francisco second, Houston, New England third, and the Rams Bears game last. So the first thing that I want to talk about as it relates to Buffalo, Denver, and I'm not trying to create a straw man argument because I don't think I am. I heard a lot of discussion about how Josh Allen played poorly. Josh Allen can't get it done. Josh Allen, est the bed with 4 turnovers, et cetera, et cetera. I just didn't see it that way. I don't get how anybody watched that game and thought he was the reason they lost the game. To me, he was the only reason they had a chance to win the game. Not at the same level as the Jacksonville game the week before, because that was a game in which Jacksonville was clearly the better team overall, and somehow Josh Allen played Superman and led them to really what I thought during the game was a win that really wasn't possible. And he put on the cape and he played that role in that win against Jacksonville. In fact, it's the best performance so far in the NFL playoffs. We've had 10 games. Josh Allen's performance at Jacksonville is number 1 on my list. I do understand he turned the ball over 4 times, and I do get it. That's not good. Of course, one of those turnovers was the last one, which I think was very controversial and debatable. And one of them was when they just got whipped off the left side and he got hit, strip sacked. And he had 2 turnovers, though, that were legitimately on him. The fumble at the end of the first half and the interception by the safety on the deep shot in the second half. But I think there were more significant plays in the game. I think James Cook's fumble when they were driving at 7-3 in the second quarter was a crushing fumble. Now, you got a long way to go in the game, and there's plenty of time to make up for it. But they had a chance in that moment to go up 2 scores. Worst case, it was going to be 10-3. Best case, 14-3. And I thought it was really a devastating fumble in the moment because Buffalo was playing well. Buffalo looked like they were as good, if not better, than Denver. Again, last week, there wasn't one moment in that game against Jacksonville where I thought Buffalo was the better team. They couldn't run the football. I mean, that's why Josh Allen had to literally put the cape on, strap the team to his back, and win it by himself. They could not run the football against Jacksonville. Well, they were running the football against Denver. They had play action working. People were open. Remember, Josh Allen's playing without 2 of his receivers. I mean, they were a depleted receiver group in that going into that game. And by the way, he was banged up heading into that game. But I thought the Cook fumble in the second quarter was a big turning point. Big turning point. I know Denver's done a good job in the fourth quarter and coming back, as Chicago has all year long, but that would have been a big potential 2-score lead. I just thought Josh Allen was really good. Not the brilliant performance that he had against Jacksonville, but he threw for 3 touchdowns. He threw for nearly 300 yards. He rushed for 66 yards. They were 10 of 15 on third down in the game, one of one on fourth down. Several of those conversions were him throwing it. Several were him running it or sneaking it. You know, he is a great sneak quarterback on the road in that environment, you know, off of, you know, the week that they had, the banged up nature, the incredible pounding and physical nature of that Jacksonville game. I thought he played really well. I think there was one play in the game that he'll regret more than any other because, you know, quarterbacks aren't perfect typically against really good defensive teams. I mean, something to keep in mind. You know, we talk about this all the time about, you know, if you don't watch the league, when you're watching your own team exclusively, you get so upset if your good players make a mistake or two. The best players in football, especially when they're being counted on to do everything, they're going to make some mistakes. They're especially against a really good defensive team on the road. But the opportunity that Josh Allen, I think, will regret more than any. Yeah, the fumble at the end of the first half, not good because it ended up costing him 3 points. It was a big swing. Instead of 17-10 at half, it was 20-10 at half. But the play before the game-tying field goal at the end of regulation, he's got Knox open inside the 10, and if he puts it on him, he's going to score. And Buffalo's going to win in an epic, borderline, almost walk-off fashion. That would have been insanity had he completed that pass and he overthrew him. Now, he was pressured as he was all day long, but that's the throw because he made so many good throws during the day, under pressure, under duress. That's the one because, you know, you're sitting there and you're like, well, are they going to go get better field goal range here? You don't want to get sacked. You don't want to get out of field goal range here. You've got a field goal right now to tie this game, at 30 apiece and send it to overtime. And he had Knox wide open inside the 10, and he missed him. That's the play. More than the turnovers, I really believe, because amazingly against a really good defense on the road, they turned the ball over 5 times in total. They lost the turnover battle, a -4, and they were right there. And that was a better throw away from them almost walking off Denver. That's the one. But overall, I got to start on that game with, I just don't agree with those that thought that Josh Allen played poorly or with those that think that Josh Allen cost them the game. I didn't see it that way. In fact, the throw to Cooks on the controversial play was just an incredible throw. Incredible throw. Overall, they're just not in the game without him. I saw somebody tweet this, somebody who was like, it kind of felt the way I did and was defending Josh Allen and talking about, you know, anybody that watched this game that didn't think he played well needs to get, it needs to watch more football. Now, for whatever it's worth, and I say this all the time when it comes to PFF, but PFF had him as the 4th highest offensive player in the game, graded. I mean, again, for whatever the PFF grading system is worth to you. He made mistakes. He also made great plays. He also missed the game winner to Knox, but I thought Josh Allen was the only reason Buffalo had a chance. I think he's a great quarterback. I think right now you could make the case he's the best quarterback in the game. You know, he and Mahomes are right there. Mahomes, obviously, serious injury. We'll see what it looks like next year. They fired McDermott. They may bring in his really good buddy, Davis Webb, who was there as a backup quarterback. Webb's been getting talk for head coaching vacancies. It might be Brian Dable, his old offensive coordinator. It might be Joe Brady, his current offensive coordinator. Football's weird, man, because it's one and done, and there's high variance week to week in how these games play out. it's such a fine line between winning and losing in that game to find it. And he's been on the wrong side of so many of these games, but in almost all of them, he's played exceptionally well. This one, though, the turnovers certainly create the opportunity for people, in my opinion, that only wanted to come down on him. But the whole was a pretty damn good overall game. So before we get to the Cooks-McMillan play, why didn't Sean Payton kick a 58-yard field goal at the end of the third quarter, up 23-17, with Will Lutz outdoors in 5,280 foot thin air on a beautiful day? Man, that was conservative coaching. I mean, in this day and age, when you get to the other team's 40, good weather, thin air, in this particular case, guy with a big leg, you kick the field goal to go up 9. I was shocked that he punted at the Buffalo 40-yard line. Shocked. I thought that was really going to come back to haunt him. They had a chance to build a 9-point lead. And look, at that point, Buffalo took over and they scored, 13 consecutive points on their next 3 drives. But that next drive, they took over and they went 85 yards and scored. I thought that was a puzzling decision by Sean Payton. I like Cortland Sutton as a receiver. I've always liked him since, he came out of SMU. He's big. He's got great body control. He is also explosive. He's a good route runner. But, man, he drops too many balls for me. And he dropped a few, 2 or 3 in that game. What was his target count? 9 targets, 4 catches. He had a couple of big ones late, but, man, he had a couple of big drops during the game. The penalties against Buffalo on the Denver drive in overtime. I thought the first one was a terrible call because it was not consistent with the way they had been calling the game. If you're going to call that one, you got to call the one when Buffalo was going in, when they had a 24-23 lead, and there was that shot to Cooks in the end zone against Riley Moss, who led the league in defensive pass interference penalties this year. I was okay with them not throwing the flag there, but then for them to throw the flag on that first DPI against Buffalo in overtime that put him in really solid field goal range, I thought was a terrible call. However, I think what got lost on that play is that even if they had picked it up, there was a roughing the passer penalty on Joey Bosa, which was legit. So they would have had 15 yards and a first down anyway. I thought the second one on Tre'Davious White was actually a good call. So I thought they missed the first one. I thought the second one, you had to call that. There was major restriction. All right, let's get to the Cooks play. So I thought it was a catch. I'm sorry. I've read Terry McAuley. I've read all of these things. A player going to the ground to catch a pass must maintain control during and after contact with the ground. He must survive the ground. I get the rule. I understand the rule. I understand that when you catch it like that, you've got to, create the football move. And then if you're going to the ground, you have to maintain possession and you have to survive the ground. And the explanation about if the ball had just popped out and not been intercepted, it would have been an incomplete pass. I don't think it was going to pop out. The guy took it from him, from my standpoint, after he had survived the ground. I think he survived the ground. I think he caught it, had possession of it, survived the ground, and if McMillan hadn't been there, it would have been a catch. The ball wouldn't have popped out and been ruled incomplete. I thought, honestly, that he completed the process of the catch, survived the ground, and then the ball was taken from him with him on the ground that he survived. That's what I thought. But it was close. I get it. It was really close. And it was a hell of a play by McMillan. It was a really good play by Jaquan McMillan. Here's the part of it, though, that I think was a mistake. Brandon Cooks needed to get up and not only act like he had the catch went to the ground, survived the ground, maintained possession, and then had it taken from him when he was already on the ground that he survived. He needed to get up and once he saw the ruling, go absolute bat you-know-what. And he didn't. He looked resigned like he thought it was an interception. I think it would have made a difference. I think it certainly would have made a difference in the way it was handled afterwards. Meaning that, Sean McDermott had to call a timeout to get them to look at it for a longer period of time, which was absurd. And did you guys see Walt Anderson, the NFL officiating spokesperson? Did you see his quote after the game? Or it may have been yesterday morning when I saw it. He said that even without a full-blown replay review, which they didn't have, insanity that they didn't have that, every play is being reviewed by multiple people. If you can confirm the ruling on the field was correct, they want to move the game along, closed quote. Move the game along? For what? What are you talking about? That is a terrible quote from Walt Anderson, the head of officiating, or I'm sorry, the spokesperson for the NFL officials. They wanted to move the game along. Why? So Seattle and San Francisco, none of the action was missed? Are you out of your mind? Move the game along. You're at the very end of the game. It's the biggest play of the game for both teams. It's going to decide potentially the game in Buffalo's favor. Move the game along. No, this is when I am fine, and I think everybody watching would be fine with pausing the game to make sure you get it right, to make sure that there is a full-blown replay review, and that we're not just saying, oh, we had multiple people look at it quickly and immediately confirm the ruling on the field was correct. We've had this year replay assist decisions be challenged and won. Remember, I forget which game it was, where a lot of people criticized Dan Quinn for challenging a replay assist call. I don't know what game that was. It may have been the Philadelphia game late in the season at home. And I said, if you've been watching the rest of the league this year, there have been a couple of those replay assists that have actually been challenged and overturned, where the replay assist guy got it wrong after they went to a full-blown replay review. I mean, what kind of quote is that? Seriously, what kind of insanity is the Walt Anderson quote? You're in a hurry to do what? Move the game along? That's really insulting to Buffalo fans, to Buffalo in particular. That's not the right quote. The right quote would have been, we had many people, it's a playoff game, many people reviewing it, as it happened in the aftermath, and they confirmed that the ruling on the field was correct. I mean, the fact that Sean McDermott had to call a timeout to get them to spend a little bit more time, because he can't challenge in overtime. There's no challenge. Everything goes to the booth. I mean, is that possible that they wanted to get that game over with? By the way, if you wanted to get the game over with, sooner to get to the Seattle-San Francisco kick, then you should have taken your time there, because if it's a catch, the game's about to end on a field goal and a win for Buffalo. Whereas, going with the call on the field to move the game along, you could have another hour left in the game because Buffalo now has to punt it. Or I'm sorry, Denver took over after the interception and they got a long field to go. The way to end the game quickly would have been to spend the right time on it, and if it ended up being ruled a catch, the game would have ended shortly thereafter. Once it was ruled an interception, you had an unlimited amount of time left potentially in the game. I mean, that game could have gone on for another hour. It probably wouldn't have, because both teams were making plays and it's outdoors and field goal kickers can kick ridiculously long field goals now. But I thought that was an absolute abhorrent quote from Walt Anderson. They want to move the game along. You can't say that. That's a divisional round playoff game. That was going to determine Buffalo, winning the game or potentially losing it because the ball was going to change hands. So anyway, my view was I understand the rule, football move, complete the process, survive the ground. And I thought he did all of those things, and then the ball was taken from him on the ground that he survived. That's what I thought. Hell of a football game, though. I mean, to kick off divisional round weekend with an overtime game, 33-30. And then, of course, the Bo Nix injury, which we had no clue about until Sean Payton addressed it in the postgame. Really, really great. I mean, from wild card weekend to kick it off with that game, I was definitely crushed. I wanted Josh Allen to win the game. I actually thought, even a healthy Denver against Houston or New England was going to be difficult, but I thought Buffalo against New England would have been a better shot. That game would have been in Foxborough, though. So now we get Jarrett Stidham, who interestingly New England drafted, and they really liked when he was there when they drafted him out of Auburn. All right, we'll get to the second game on Saturday, Seattle and San Francisco. Then Doug Kammerer will jump on with us, and then we'll get back to the games on Sunday, where we had truly one of the most dreadful performances by a quarterback we've seen in a long time. But personally, I don't think it was all his fault. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
It's Rashid Shaheed. With the steam, Shaheed breaks through. Still going. A flag flies. Shaheed's going to take it all the way. Let's see if it stands.
Saturday night, Seattle kicked it off. They didn't kick it off, but I meant they kicked off the game with a 95-yard Rashid Shaheed kickoff return. God, can he fly? I mean, when he was out there, in trade deadline form, we talked about him a lot. Now, I'm glad Washington didn't do it. Would have made no sense for a rental with the team they had this year. But God, can he fly? And that obviously set the tone for a game in which, look, it was a borderline repeat of the Week 18 game. Seattle is just much better than the San Francisco team that, ended up playing a lot of this season. You have to give Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh, who looks like he's going to get the Tennessee job, you got to give, John Lynch the incredible season that they had, considering all the injuries. And they beat a Philadelphia team last week at the Link, a Philadelphia team that wasn't right, no doubt. But they just were terrible defensively down the stretch with all of the missing players. And offensively, when they lost Kittle, it just meant more difficulty. And then they lost McCaffrey during the game. You can't overcome all of that. And then Seattle, like they did in the Week 18 game in Santa Clara, they ran the football. Kenneth Walker, 116 yards on just 19 carries, over 6 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. But they lost Zach Charbonnet. He's done. That's a big blow. I love Walker the third. I like Charbonnet a lot. I think that they should have been running the ball even more. But think about this. They beat San Francisco 41-6 with their best player, Jackson Smith in the Jigba, being targeted just 4 times for 3 total catches and 19 yards. That's it. They didn't need him. Their defense is so good. Ernest Jones was one of the best players this weekend, just flat out all over the field. What a football game he played. Had the interception, had a near second one, forced a fumble, just dominant in that game. Seattle over San Francisco, 41-6. Purdy they just didn't have enough. They didn't have enough at wide receiver. They didn't have enough at running back with McCaffrey hurting. And then defensively, this team was a mess down the stretch. And that tells you all you need to know about Philadelphia. Philadelphia's offense was so bad that it couldn't take advantage of San Francisco's horrendous defense. I mean, they got obliterated by teams down the stretch. I mean, old Phillip Rivers in his second game threw for nearly 300 yards against San Francisco on a Monday night game in which they had, it was like a 35-27 game midway through the third quarter. It was really a competitive game until it wasn't, because they couldn't stop San Francisco. So Seattle staying at home. The 2-1 seeds survive the weekend. And that's, a part of what you get from that week off. Sometimes they'll, I heard Sean Payton said teams coming off buys don't play as great in the first half as they do in the second half in their first playoff game. Denver played pretty well in the first half and in the second half. Of course, they'll send Jarrett Stidham out there Sunday against the Patriots. I'll get to the other 2 games, the Sunday games, in about 20-25 minutes. Doug Kammerer is going to jump on with us next to talk about what I think a lot of you are talking about, and that is some of these incredible snow totals that are being put out on the internet for the weekend storm. Stanford Steve from ESPN will jump on with us at noon. He was there last night for Indiana's national championship win over Miami. What a great game it was. Doug Kammerer, Storm, Snow Talk next. That might be what it sounds like. Saturday night, Sunday into Monday. But then again, it could be sunny and 50 because these models, they're tough to kind of follow. My guy Doug Kammer is with us. I'm sure most of you have certainly seen on your phone. Man, those weather apps print out a lot of snow totals. Don't always pay attention to those, but social media certainly has lit up the last 24 to 48 hours with what looks to be not just a storm for the Mid-Atlantic, but the Southeast. And this one could be huge this weekend. It's certainly going to be cold enough. Doug Kammer from Channel 4 is with me. You can follow Doug on X, on Twitter, at Doug Kammer. Of course, he is the chief meteorologist at NBC4. I can tell you he comes on at 4:15, 4:45, 5:15, 5:45, 6:15, 6:45, and at about 11:15, 11:17 for the 11 o'clock news. He's also a massive sports fan. And I know sometimes you'd rather talk about sports, and we could talk about, the playoffs just completed. But, man, this is the one I think we've been waiting for a while. 16 was the last really big one. I'll just start by asking you at this point, Tuesday at 11:05 a.m., separate fact from fiction.
Yeah, and I got to tell you first, you're right. I absolutely love coming on sports shows to talk about the weather.
Well, I'd rather come on your show and talk about weather.
I know, right? It's incredible. But we do it a lot, right? We do it a lot, and that's what's going on here. We got this storm that's coming up, and it's really one of those storms that has kind of got a perfect scenario going on for it. Now, this is not going to be a nor'easter for us. This is not going to be a blizzard. I've gotten that question this morning. Are we really getting a blizzard on Saturday and Sunday? The answer is no. Why not? Because this is not going to have the wind component. This is not going to be a super strong storm that brings us 30, 40 mile per hour winds along with high snowfall rates. That's not what we're going to get. What we're going to get is what's called an overrunning situation, and that means we've got cold air coming down, Arctic air coming down. At the same time, we've got moisture coming in above the surface. And when those two hit, you get that snow that falls. And if it's cold enough, and I think it's going to be, we're talking about some really fluffy snow around this area that could really pile up. And you mentioned the part about the Southeast, all the way from Dallas to Atlanta, and really all the way to the coast. I mean, you're talking about the Carolinas. This is going to be a massive ice storm. I just tried to give my brother a call. He's in the Dallas area. I'm actually thinking about asking him to leave Dallas, because if they pick up over an inch of ice, and right now some of the forecast models are predicting an inch to 2 inches of ice from Dallas all the way over towards Atlanta, in towards areas like the entire state of of South Carolina, this is going to have catastrophic power outages in those areas. So, something that we're really going to be watching on top of the Arctic air. But for us, it looks like it's an all snow event. This thing stays just far enough south that we have no chance, as of right now, we have no chance of getting any mix in our area.
All right. I'm a model watcher, and different type of models that we're talking about, people, but these are weather models, and I just checked out the icon. That looks like an absolute pounding, but the GFS just gave us a worst case.
Yeah.
And the GFS, not super reliable, but what I'd love you to do is just talk about right now what the upside is. Like the for us, it would be the best case. For some, it would be the worst case. But in terms of the most snow, that we could get out of this, but also what the fail could be if we end up getting very little.
Exactly right. And there's always bust and boom potential with these storms. So when I look at a storm like this one, the immediate thing that I look at, the Arctic air is working its way down. That high pressure area is super strong. It's going to bring your record breaking temperatures to much of the middle of the country. And then for us, I mean, we could be talking about snow with a high temperature of 18 degrees on Sunday. I mean, it's really some big time Arctic air. Arctic air is very dry. So if that Arctic air moves in and that high pressure is a little bit stronger, then that could send this system a little farther to the south. The farther south it goes, the less moisture we get in our area. So right now we're pretty much in the sweet spot. The sweet spot now is just a little to the south of us, closer to the Richmond area. So if this thing shifts south, say 100 miles, there's a pretty strong cutoff between where we are in D.C. and central Pennsylvania. Almost nothing in central Pennsylvania. If this moves far enough south, then we don't get nearly as much here. So that's the one thing I'm looking at. And as you know, with these models, they tend to start shifting south only to come back to the north. So I do like our positioning on this. I don't think that's going to happen. But if you look at some of the ensembles, that is what's going on with those, and that's normal for these types of storms. Now, as far as the upside goes, you look at models like the European, you look at models like the UK Met. Now, these are tried and true models that we've had for a long time. We talk about the European model. As you know, the European model is done by the Europeans in Britain. The UK Met, same thing. These are great models that have statistically been the best models out there. The American model, for some other reason, has not done well. It just is not a very good model. It's not one that we look at. You can look at this past weekend to tell us, because the American model had 3 to 6 inches of snow in D.C. and the European had nothing. And you see what we got in D.C. this past weekend. So looking at those models, the European model, for example, if you take into account our snow ratios, and I think you have to, because the colder the air, the more the snow can fluff. So that's what we'd call a snow ratio. Normally, a snow ratio is 10 to 1, so 10 inches of snow to every inch of liquid precipitation. The European is giving us about an inch of liquid precip. So if you take into account the ratios, 10 to 1, that's 10 inches of snow right there. Pretty easy. However, I think with the cold air, you add in the ratios, I think you could be talking about a 15 to 1 scenario, which would put us at 15 inches of snow in the DC metro area. That's on the European side. Of course, now, as you mentioned, the GFS does the same thing. The UK Met, which is one of my favorite models, and is really, I think, underutilized a lot, did a really good job with this past storm. And it actually has 1.7 inches of precip.
Yeah.
So that's 17 inches of snow on a 10 to 1 ratio, and
that's 2 feet.
Nearly 2 feet. Yeah. On, if you're talking about what we use is something called Kuchera, which is Kuchera. And I know I'm throwing out a lot of different.
Yeah, but that thing's always hyped. Don't you think it's always overdone, the Kuchera?
It is, because the reason why is because we should almost never use it in our area. This is made for areas like Denver and snow and where you have enough cold. Where you have enough cold, you can take this into account. So that's what's adding in the ratios. Because Kuchera, at the same time, if it's not warm, if it's not cold enough, if it's a little too warm, will also knock your snow totals down. So that's what it's for. It's really a ratio, kind of more of a ratio algorithm that it puts together. So looking at those things, we're looking at what I think is going to be a pretty good storm. What I'm telling people today, I'm telling my friends this. Now, this is not a forecast just yet, but I'm saying expect at least 6 to 10 inches, and there could be more. But to your point, here we are Tuesday. We're still 5 days out from this event, so a lot can happen. This thing again drifts south 100 miles. We're out of the jackpot again. So that's something we'll continue to watch. I don't think it drifts north. I think the high pressure is a little bit too strong. If it was to drift north, we'd be dealing with the ice situation in our area, but I don't think that's the case.
So you said something from the very beginning, Doug Kammer from Channel 4 joining us, talking about the potential storm this weekend. You said this is not going to be a nor'easter, meaning we're not going to see a redevelopment off the Carolina coast and a big, nor'easter riding up the coast. Why not with this one?
Because that high pressure area does not allow it to make that turn up the coast.
I thought the negative NAO does, though.
Negative NAO would, if it was to make the turn up, it would keep it from moving up very quickly.
Okay.
So the negative NAO, you can still go south You know, like this
Got
thing
it.
can still go south, but it will eventually try to get to the north. But yeah, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. By the way, I'm looking at the new GFS that just came out, and it does exactly what we just talked about, and moves things to the south.
I know that's what I said. Right, I looked at it right before you came on. I'm like, but you don't trust the GFS. It just suppressed everything to the south. Now you got to look at those ensembles to know for sure, but you don't trust the American model, right?
No, I don't trust it at all. I mean, to the point where last week when we were looking at this on Thursday, and it was showing good snows on this past weekend, I didn't even use it. I didn't even, I have to mention, hey, we have a chance of some snow this weekend, but I didn't even put it on my 10-day forecast because I just don't want people to be confused by this. This is not a very good model. Its track record is terrible. And when you look at something like the European, and now you've got the AI models out there, the European AI has done a very good job with our snowstorms, with our hurricanes. I mean, it looks like a really good model.
For those of you that aren't getting the acronyms and the model talk, I mean, this is what Doug can explain it, but weather forecasting didn't used to have these 40 years ago, 50 years ago, but now, and I don't want to knock what you do because I think you're the best at nowcasting and all of that, which, doesn't rely on models, but really your forecasting is driven by a bunch of computer models that print out what's going to happen. And then you have to decipher through which ones do I believe and which ones don't I believe.
Right, and we're looking at we're not just looking at the straight snow output for something like this. There's so many things that have to go into a forecast. I mean, we're looking at what's happening up at 500 millibars. You're looking at something that's going on up in the jet stream. Where's the energy coming from? This is a different kind of a storm in the fact that we have not had a southern branch system yet this year. Everything we've had, This is why we've been so dry, has been a northern branch system. So we haven't had the southern branch of the jet stream really activate to bring us any real moisture. That's what this one is going to do. So this one's going to have a ton of moisture. Now it's just a matter of finding out exactly where that goes. And you look at the northern branch of the jet stream to bring the southern branch up. So these two have to in effect phase, and they have to come together in the right spot. And too often this winter, they have phased too late for us. So we've had the cold air, we've had all the ingredients have been right. The negative NAO, the positive PNA, all that stuff that we talk about has been correct. However, the phasing has been just too far to the east for us.
Yeah.
So we've never really had any chance to get any real snow in our area. But this time we have that. The trough is set up so far to the west, and the air is the air is so cold from the north that this is set up to be perfect. Again, somebody is going to get a ton of snow, and there's going to be another part of the country. And I really do hope it's not that that Dallas to Atlanta corridor. Somebody is going to get a lot of ice out of this.
We were at the Super Bowl in Dallas in 2010, the Green Bay Pittsburgh, and they had a Super Bowl week. The Monday morning, we woke up 1.5 inches of ice. Doug, they never cleared it the entire week. They just didn't have the ability to clear it. It was an absolute disaster. Yeah, nobody wants that for anybody. So just, I want to get to start times, et cetera, duration of the storm. But what Doug has laid out for you is, there's a chance the cold air to the north is just, the high pressure is so strong that it keeps the significant, snows to our south. There's also a chance that it doesn't, and we end up with, a foot or more and potentially a lot more. On that, just the suppression worst case for those of us that want the most snow, is no snow a possibility at this point or not?
As far as accumulation goes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely cannot say it's not. I mean, if you look at, I'll give you a great example of this. I love working with what's called the ensembles.
Yeah.
The ensembles are, so the European is the best model. The European is run 50 different times. The European running 50 times, each one of those is what's called an ensemble. if you think about what's called the butterfly effect, you take the initial conditions and then you tweak them just a little bit. And the butterfly effect tells us that the longer out in time you get, the different outcome is going to be much greater. So if you look at the ensembles, that's exactly what we do. We tweak just a little something, temperature at 850, at 5,000 feet, or we make it a little bit more moisture, and then we get different outcomes from the storm. And if you look at what the European is doing for us, it is giving most of us, and it's about, I did it yesterday in the European AI, it's about a 90% chance of 6 inches of snow. That's the European. But at the same time, that also means there's about a 6 to 8% chance of nothing.
Right.
So the chance is there, and we have to talk in percentages. But if I'm a betting guy and I've got something that's 90%, of course we're going to watch this, right? It's 90% today. It could be 86% tomorrow. Then it could be 82%. Then it could be 72%. So we have to watch the trends here. And the trend is something that we watch very closely. And as I said, I would not be surprised to see the trend move south a little bit today and tomorrow, and then come back on Thursday. I would not be surprised at that at all.
Do you trust the Canadian?
The Canadian is now better than the American model, so it's not that.
Well, it's about to lay down an absolute walloping on us. But again,
are you looking at it now?
Yeah, looking at it right now. It is not the GFS run that we just saw 20 minutes ago. So give me the timing of this, because the timing and the duration. An overrunning event versus the nor'easter. Can we still get a long duration event? When's the start? When's the finish?
Yeah, it looks like it starts early on Sunday morning, and fairly light snow at the beginning of this. And you look at that, once again, the air is going to be super dry. It's going to take a little while to what's called moisten the layer or the atmosphere. So it's going to take a little time for it to develop during the morning hours on Sunday. But once it starts to develop, you'll start to see the snow coming down heavier. And by noon, 1 o'clock, it looks like you'll start to see some heavier snow, and that's going to last all day. And the one thing, you and I talked by phone yesterday about this not being a long duration event. Well, now that upper level low behind it comes in, and we kind of get the snow right on through the day early on Monday. So this is looking like a little longer duration event. However, the last 6 to 10 hours of it are going to be a fairly light snow. So you're going to get that band of heavier snow that works its way in here Saturday or Sunday afternoon into Sunday evening.
And, you've already mentioned it, but for those, thinking about it, this is not going to be one of those storms that, the temperatures are 29, 30, 31, 32 degrees. What do you think the temperature will be start to finish in this storm? Very cold, right?
I mean, yeah. And again, if you look at the European is super cold. The UK Met is. I'm going to be extremely interested to see the UK Met today. It only comes out once a day. We don't get a 0-0 run of the UK Met. The UK Met, the last 2 days, has put out tremendous amounts of snowfall and has had us with a high temperature in the single digits to around 10 degrees all day on Sunday. That is blockbuster type stuff. So I'm very interested. That's the worst case scenario that I'm seeing is and has been the UK Met. I really do like the European. And if you look at the European, even the 6Z European comes in and gives us nearly 10 inches of snow. And the model's not even done yet. That's through Sunday afternoon. We haven't even seen the worst of the snow yet. So the European would give us another probably 3 to 6 inches on top of that. So, I think there's a very good possibility that we see over a foot of snow. I think right now the National Weather Service puts us at about a 40% chance of a foot of snow. So that's significant this far out. Yeah. So we'll be watching that for sure.
Well, you and I have talked about this before, but the real big ones, and the last real big one was 2016. By the way, right before championship weekend, the Patriots were playing at Denver in the early game that particular weekend. And the models tend to kind of sniff out the really big ones a week, in advance. And that's kind of what we've had with this one.
Right. And you look at those storms now, we've seen this one. This is what's interesting with this one too. Because of the path that this one is taking, this one is a little bit easier to forecast early than, say, a nor'easter.
Right.
A nor'easter needs to come together well and make its way up the coast. It needs to go down far enough that we keep the cold air in, and then it needs to turn a corner and make its way out. For us, a 2016 nor'easter or 2009, 2010 needs to turn the corner and be sitting at the mouth of the Chesapeake at its peak. And that gives us the most amount of snow with this. And then it moves up. And again, it has to hug the coast.
Yeah.
One change in that, it goes a little too far south. It stays a little too far east. It brings in warm air and it comes to the west. There are so many different variables that could screw that one up. With this type of a storm, there's really only that one big variable. There's many, but the biggest variable here is the cold air coming down, the Arctic high coming down, being too strong, and it's just pushing this thing a little farther to the south. So I really do like this. And here's the other thing, Kev, that I just thought about yesterday after you and I were talking. We talk about the European and the UK Met in the GFS. These are all what's called physics-based models. These are the models that we've been using for the last 30 years. They've been improved upon, especially the European. That's why it does such a good job. The AI models are brand new. They don't take into account, like if we look at storms on the physics-based models, I normally wait for the pieces of energy, the players. Let's say you have a chessboard. I wait for the chess pieces to all be on the map. And that means all on the coast. Why is that? Because physics-based models need all the information. So I need to wait for those pieces of energy in the upper atmosphere to reach the coastline on the west coast so that we have the best data, so that air, we can map it, we can figure out where it is, we can see what's going on. That's normally 3 to 4 days out. So we're getting within that range. But the physics-based models need that. The AI models don't. And this is my thinking on those. The AI models, because they do not they're not physics-based, they're not taking in the same information. They're looking at past information. They're looking at they're making their forecast a different way. They don't need the same things that the physics-based models do, and they're still saying this. So that is really intriguing to me to see what's going on, because the AI models do this in such a different way. So my rationale here normally is, all right, I need all the players on the board. Well, maybe with the AI models, we don't, because they're not on the board yet. They're still sitting over the Pacific Ocean, moving our way.
Yeah, the way you explained it, and I hope people picked up, certain storms are so much harder because they require projecting where the actual storm off the Atlantic coast will form. And you don't know that, you can project it a week in advance. This one's traipsing across the country, tapping the Gulf of Mexico, and is a massive shield of precipitation that we're going to see days in advance.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And you just mentioned the Icon. I just took a look at the Icon. The Icon is not a great model. The Icon, for those of you who do not know, is actually a model that's run out of Germany. It doesn't have a great track record. It is another tool, but just like we're talking about it, it gives us tremendous amounts of snow. And Sunday afternoon, when the heaviest snow is falling, also puts the area of low pressure exactly where I want it, which is down around Norfolk, Virginia Beach. And it gives us a high temperature of about 16 degrees with heavy snow that day, and easily gives us over a foot of snow.
Yeah. Last thing, well, two things. Number one, we're not, because this isn't going to be a true nor'easter, we're not going to get the winds, we're not going to get the blizzard conditions. It'll just be, moderate to heavy snow for a long period of time with high ratios because of the cold temperatures, right? There's no chance of a secondary low developing and pulling in colder air and wind, right?
No. We don't see that. This is not. It will transfer. There will be an energy transfer. There always is toward the coast, but it will not be something like a nor'easter, which then moves up the coast. This will still, I'm not going to tell you it doesn't take a turn. It does take a little turn up the coast. So areas, towards our beaches and things like that, they'll be getting some wind. But this is not going to be, as of right now, it does not look like a big wind event. So that's something we'll be tracking too. And one thing I want to say to the listeners out there, and I said this on TV yesterday, your apps, the weather app on your phone, the Apple app and stuff, does not look at it. No meteorologist ever looks at that. So that app is going to be wrong more than it's right. So you have my cousin sent me today. She said, "Hey, are we really getting 18 to 23 inches of snow?" Now, that's actually in the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, but that's just one model output, and what you'll see with that, and this is what's happened. We already had a storm where it said that this year, and they said we were going to get 18 inches of snow, and of course we didn't get anything out of that storm.
Yeah.
So, don't listen to those models. I do not give my official forecast until probably Thursday, until at least 48 hours out.
So that was my last question. No snow map tonight or tomorrow night?
No. I will show on the air. I'm not even going to show what some of the models are saying. Now, if you listen to my Facebook 101, I do facebook.com/Doug Kammer, or 3:00 this afternoon. I actually go into depth and I talk about what each model is bringing us, and I talk about how these storms are progressing and what to look for and what not to look for. I do that for, just like I'm doing with your show here, talking for 20 minutes. I talk for 20 minutes because when I'm on the air on TV, I get 3 minutes. Today I might get a little bit more,
I know.
But I get 3 minutes.
They're going to have to give you more time this week. You're going to have to go in there
Absolutely.
and say, I need 6.
I would love to get the old days where you got the 4 to 5 minutes of weather. That would be fantastic.
Well, Doug, you know this, and I'm not sure everybody listening knows this. Local news has changed so much over the years, and the number one ratings driver of a local newscast is weather. I'm right about that, correct?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's not something, well, unless you're believing your weather apps, and don't do that. But people love, especially, the ratings this week will be through the roof every night and through the weekend.
Right.
So Doug had a skiing trip planned to Park City this weekend. Have you decided to bail on it?
Yeah, I'll be looking into that today. Yeah.
You're not hoping that the storm all of a sudden disappears from the models so you can go skiing, are you?
That's a good question, but probably not. No, it's that's one of those things I'm telling people, and I said this on the air yesterday. I would not cancel any plans this weekend until at least tomorrow. We're 5 days out. It's just too early to really do that. So I've had people say, "Hey, I've got an event coming up on Sunday. Am I able to make it? Hey, I have to drive up to New York on Sunday. Am I able to do that?" So I don't want anybody to cancel any plans or to think about, hey, what do we? Obviously think about your secondary plan now, sure, but don't make any changes to any plans as of right now, because once again, if this thing stays a little farther south, then all we end up with is a cold mess.
Right. This is your Super Bowl, man. This is at least championship week for you. And by the way, real quickly, I do have one more question.
100%.
It certainly doesn't look like the pattern's going to change. It looks, and I know long range is very, dicey, but it looks like the cold and the storm opportunities continue after this one, correct or not?
Yeah, right into early February. I really do think we've got more chances of a lot more cold. And we have some chances, more chances of snow out there as well. So we could get into a fairly stormy pattern here as we make our way through the first week of February, and maybe beyond that, because some of the other long range models that we use really do continue to implicate the fact that we're going to stay on the cold side here. It's been a cold winter already, a very cold winter for us. So,
yeah,
and you mentioned Park City, they've seen almost no snow.
I know
that way. Denver's had its warmest winter ever, and yet here we are over here, freezing our tushies off.
You actually told me yesterday we have a chance to see one of the coldest temperatures we've ever seen potentially in DC next week.
Yeah, and once again, you look at the UK Met, you look at the European. I mean, they're putting our numbers down below zero next week. If we haven't been below zero in DC in 30 years. So that's extremely significant. I mean, Dulles has hit it a couple of times.
Yeah.
Dulles got to -2, I think, a couple of years ago. So, we get cold here, but DC has not been below zero in over 30 years. So this is going to be something that is, could be historic. Not only do we have the potential of a big snowstorm, but we also have the potential for some severe cold. And that's something we'll be tracking as well.
Coldest temperature ever in DC, 15 below zero back in 1899, I think, was the record.
15 below zero. And to you and I were like, wait a second, is that actually valid? Because the next
who
lowest
knows what
is
they
11.
were measuring it with.
11 below, and then the next lowest is 6 below. So is that a one-off? But even if it is, hey, I don't think we get that cold. I don't think we're going to go record-breaking, at least in the DC area. But it could be record-breaking in a lot of other places.
You're the best. Thanks for doing this. I definitely am going to call you back at the end of the week as we get closer to it. I appreciate it as always.
Oh, and I know you'll be texting me when the European comes out today at 1 o'clock.
we're about an hour and 20 minutes away from that one.
I know.
Thanks, Doug.
We got to watch him. You bet. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Doug Kammer, everybody from Channel 4. Tune in tonight, 4 o'clock hour, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then he's back at 11 o'clock. He wants this. I know he does, even with his ski trip planned, which he'll have to bail on if this thing continues to come to fruition. But, we get these. This is the one thing we get in our area. Earthquake, we had the earthquake, in 2011. But tornadoes are rare. Hurricanes are usually tropical storms when they get here. The one thing from Mother Nature that is always a possibility in the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast is a crippling, true snowstorm. That's in play for this weekend. We'll go back to the other two games from divisional round playoff weekend when we come back that we haven't talked about. Those would be the Sunday games. Stanford Steve will join us at noon to talk about last night's national championship game.
Anderson coming off the edge. May steps into it, takes a shot downfield, and caught for the touchdown, Kayshon Boutte. Wow.
What a catch that was, a Sunday in Foxborough. Man, we had 2 playoff games outdoors, snow a factor, weather a factor. It was pure cinema all day long. We continue with just recapping and talking about the 4 divisional round games. We talked about the 2 Saturday games last hour, the Denver-Buffalo game and the Seattle-San Francisco game. We'll take care of New England-Houston and Rams-Chicago this hour. And then Stanford Steve from ESPN will jump on with us at noon to talk about last night's national championship game. So, New England 28, Houston 16. That was an unbelievable catch by Kayshon Boutte. Unbelievable. So, look, this game really can be summed up very simply. If C.J. Stroud had played like Trent Dilfer did in 2000, when Dilfer was the quarterback of one of the greatest defensive teams we've ever seen in NFL history, the 2000 Ravens, because that Houston defense on Sunday was as advertised. And I think if C.J. Stroud is allowed to or forced to play the game that Trent Dilfer played, which is super conservative, no mistakes, no chances taken, that Houston defense, I think, would have won the game if the offense had just handed the ball off 3 times and punted it the entire way. But they didn't. C.J. Stroud was horrendous. 4 interceptions, threw it inaccurately all day long. His first throw of the day was dirted in front of a wide-open receiver. 20 of 47. He completed 42% of his passes. Stroud became the first player since Kerry Collins in the 2000 Super Bowl, which was against the Ravens, to complete under 43% of his passes and throw 4 or more interceptions in a postseason game. He became the first player to ever have 5 interceptions and 5 plus fumbles in a single postseason. Remember, he put the ball on the ground at Pittsburgh in the wild card round 5 times. Lost 2 of them, but the ball was on the ground 5 times. So, excuse me, he never looked right. He didn't look right at times against Pittsburgh. I mean, he was bad against Pittsburgh. He was worse against New England, albeit the Patriot defense is sensational right now. Sensational. It has led them to their 2 playoff victories so far. It was great against the Chargers, and it was phenomenal Sunday against Houston. As good as the Patriots defense is, and it's outstanding, it's not the Houston defense. That Houston defense on Sunday, I thought literally if they had punted the ball on first down, they could have at least had a chance at the end. Houston's 2 playoff games against Pittsburgh and New England, listen to this defensively. They allowed 3.5 yards per play. The 2 teams went 5 for 28 on third down. Houston had 9 sacks, forced 5 turnovers, and scored 2 touchdowns in 2 playoff games. They almost had a third early in that game in Foxborough. If Danielle Hunter should have just fallen on that first Drake May fumble rather than trying to pick it up. If that ball had bounced up, he scores. I don't think we've seen a defense like Houston's defense this year in a long time. I was expecting a potential Ravens 2000 like run, but C.J. Stroud actually more talent than Dilfer. Their offense a little bit better than even that offense was in terms of the potential. But I don't think I've ever seen a defense as great as Houston's be completely washed out and undone by its offense. Now, I blame Stroud. He never looked right. He looked completely off as he did against Pittsburgh. But I also blame the Houston coaches. They literally would have had a much better chance to win the game had they been super conservative on offense. Run the ball. And I know they weren't running it very well. Who cares? Running the ball, you're not going to have this guy putting the ball up for grabs. Where were the quick, high percentage, quick game throws, screens, bubble screens? It made no sense to keep dropping Stroud back. No sense at all. For the game, Stroud ended up dropping back 50 times. The game didn't get to a 2-score game out of reach until the fourth quarter. Even at 21-10, they came out and they dominated the third quarter and drew within 21-16. I mean, I thought that they were, just one decent, offensive play away from making it 21-19. And then who knows? Maybe another turnover would have come the other way. And you kick a field goal and win 22-21. Stroud was the key participant in their demise. But what were you thinking, Houston coaching staff? You couldn't protect him. They didn't have Nico Collins. They lost their number one tight end early in the game. They had issues along the offensive line, no Trent Brown, etc. They couldn't protect in the drop back game, and yet they kept dropping him back. I get it. Every time they ran the ball, it wasn't very successful. Who cares? That's a game in which punting was so much preferable to the turnovers. I mean, on the other side, Drake May fumbled the ball 4 times in the game, lost 2 of them, should have lost a third if Danielle Hunter had just fallen on the ball rather than try to pick it up and score. Why did they continue to put Stroud at risk, the team at risk, based on his decision-making, which they should have known coming into the game, but certainly during the game, was not very good. The ball should have been completely taken out of C.J. Stroud's hands, and not necessarily for Davis Mills, by the coaches. Dudes, you have a chance to hand the ball off, punt 9 or 10 times, and still win with your defense. You dropped a guy back against that defense 50 times in a game in which he was completely flummoxed from the start. He also probably was hurt. He hurt his finger. He clearly wasn't right. C.J. Stroud can actually really throw the football. He can make some big-time plays. This idea that he hasn't played at all at any point in time well since his rookie year is not true. He played well in the playoffs last year in both their win in the first round over the Chargers. He was sensational. And then in the game against the Chiefs that they lost in the divisional round. But he was not right. And they kept thinking that maybe he was going to turn right. And look, if you've got a team that has to score to win, okay. But you didn't have to score very much to win that game. You gave up a pick 6 on a terrible decision instead of taking that sack. You gave up, basically there was that one drive, and look, I'm going to get to Drake May in a moment, but you had a chance to play that game, 1970s old school conservative on offense, 3 runs, 3, in multiple punts. Do you know that Houston had 15 possessions in the game? 15! And they only gained 30 or more yards on 2 of them. And he threw 4 interceptions. You got to be kidding me. I don't know how they couldn't feel it. You got a defense that is wrecking the New England offense. Keep putting them back out onto the field rather than putting them back out onto the field after your quarterback's thrown an interception. Now, on the Patriots in this game, the Texans only averaged 3.3 yards per play. The Patriots only averaged 3.9 yards per play. May didn't protect the ball at all. Second straight playoff game, he has not protected the football. 4 fumbles, lost 2, should have lost a third. But unlike Stroud, May made some big-time plays. On Monday night against the Steelers, Stroud had all those mistakes. He also made some big-time plays on third down in that game against Pittsburgh. They were 8 for their first 9 third down conversions, in part because he made some really good throws on third down. May made some good throws. The 3 touchdown throws were all great. The 4th down touchdown throw to Douglas, the throw to Diggs, what a catch by Diggs. And then Butte, what a catch by Butte. Their receivers were outstanding. Diggs, Butte, Douglas, big time contested catches. But the throws were perfect. I don't understand how Houston didn't feel it in game. You cannot drop a guy back 50 times that A, you can't protect him on, B, he's without his best receivers and his best tight end, so nobody's getting open. You are okay punting almost every time you have the ball offensively. Turning it over is going to cost you a chance. I mean, think about this, right? They turned it over 5 times and still down 21-16 going into the fourth quarter. Now, New England helped out with their 3 fumbles, or the 3 turnovers, 2 fumbles by May, 4 total, lost 2. And the interception he had was a Hail Mary at the end of the first half. I don't count those as interceptions. I mean, New England couldn't convert 3rd downs. They couldn't convert 4th downs. They had 248 yards of total offense, and a lot of those yards came at the end when Houston's defense finally started to wear down a little bit. And Stevenson ended up running big time on that final drive. Travion Henderson, one of the more explosive rookie backs we've seen in a while, had 12 carries for 25 yards. Drake May got sacked 5 times, got pressured over and over again. Will Anderson Jr., I think you could say, was the best player divisional round weekend. The best player for any team, winners or losers. Will Anderson Jr. just wrecked the game, but they couldn't take advantage of it because Stroud kept giving the ball back. And New England's defense gets a lot of credit for it. They were outstanding against the Chargers. They were outstanding against Houston. I just can't believe that they'd have this dude drop back 50 times. There were barely any screens called. They certainly didn't try to run the ball. They couldn't run it. I understand that. But you would have shortened the game. You would have punted sooner instead of turning it over. And the best part of your team would have been back out onto the field ready to cause another fumble or make another play. Weird game that in 2026, a team had a chance in this era of football with playing just defense. You know, Rigo said to me many years ago, some of you will remember this because some of you sent me notes on this. Rigo said many years ago in one of his wildest thoughts ever, he said, what if I just fielded 3 defensive units and just kept putting them out there and just punted on first down every game? But it was my best players were all the best defensive players in the game. How many games would I win? I'm like, I don't know. That didn't really seem like the right way to play. But on Sunday, it was the right way to play for Houston, and they didn't. All right. The last game we'll get to next.
Point deep. Shot through. Nailed it. Count it. Point lost Stewart. And hit again.
All right, we're going to save the Bears-Rams game for last because we're coming up against our 12 o'clock break, and Stanford Steve's going to jump on with us to talk about last night's national championship game. My what do you got is Diggy Coit. Some of you may not know who I'm talking about. That was a string of highlights from his game Sunday in College Park against Penn State, where David Diggy Coit went for 43 points in Maryland's first Big Ten win of the year, a 96-73 pasting of Penn State. Diggy in this game had 30 points in the first half. I swear to you, I know that all of us, and me in particular, can be prone to hyperbole, especially with something that just happened recently. It was one of the greatest shooting/scoring halves by a college player I have ever seen. Ever. He had 30 points on 10 of 14 from the floor, 6 of 7 from behind the arc. Now, these, 30-point halves happen all the time in the NBA. I'm talking about a college half. Diggy's 5'10", maybe. He played at Northern Illinois to start his career, played at Kansas last year, didn't get a lot of run, and then transferred to Maryland to play for Buzz Williams in Buzz's first year in College Park. A year, by the way, if you're not paying attention, and I would assume most of you are not, has not gone well. The Terps are now 8-10 after their first Big Ten win overall, 1-6 in the Big Ten. Their 6 losses in the Big Ten weren't even close. They came by an average loss margin of 17.5 points per. But Coit has had an interesting year. That game on Sunday was the second time he's gone for 40 or more. He went for 41 against Mount St. Mary's in November. He's gone for 30 or more twice. So he's had 4 games where he's gone for 30 or more this year. A 5'10" scoring, point guard, off guard, however it works out with them offensively. Last week at USC, he had 30 in the first 30 minutes and then didn't score down the stretch as they got blown out. But what makes Sunday's performance more interesting than just this 5'10" guard going for 43, 30 in the first half is that he got to 43 and there were still 4 minutes and 39 seconds left in the game. And the Maryland all-time single game scoring record has stood for 47 years. Ernie Graham had 44 in December of 1978 against NC State. I swear to you, if they had had the three-point line back then, it would have been 50 or 51. But that 44-point mark by Ernie Graham has stood for 47 years. And there's Diggy Coit at 43 with still 4 minutes and 39 seconds left in the game. Well, of course, he's going to set the all-time record. He might get 50. And he didn't. He didn't score the rest of the way. He only put up 2 more shots. He missed them both. And they didn't try to get him shots. The head coach, Buzz Williams, admitted to Chris Nocky after the game that he didn't know. He didn't know that Diggy Coit was on the verge of breaking the school scoring record. Had no idea. Now, the crowd knew. You could tell it. Diggy said he knew, but he didn't think he should go out of his way to break the record. I can't believe that nobody told the head coach in a miserable season so far that, hey, we got a chance to do something special here. He's got a chance to set the all-time scoring mark in a game. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm glad he didn't. Not because I don't like the player. I like watching this guy play. He's really exciting. He is short, but he is quick. He creates a lot of space, with the dribble, even off the ball. And then he's got a super quick release. He can really score. He's the reason, if you're going to watch Maryland basketball now that football season is coming to an end, that you would watch it. But for me, a lifelong Terp, as entertaining as Diggy's performance was Sunday, and some of his performances have been this year, I don't want Ernie's record. to go down to a guy that's going to be here for 1 year on a bad team, a 1-year rental. No disrespect to him. Ernie Graham for 4 years in the late 70s, early 80s, playing for one of Lefty's or a few of Lefty's best teams. I mean, they were ranked in the top 10. They were ranked in the top 5 with Ernie Graham, Albert King, Buck Williams, Greg Manning, Dutch Morley, Reggie Jackson. Those teams were loaded, and Ernie could really score. He was streaky. That record has stood for 47 years. Bias got 41 at Duke. Joe Smith got 40 at Duke. Gravis Vasquez had a chance at Virginia Tech, scoring 41 in 2010. So those guys, I would have been thrilled had they set the record. They were established Terps. Again, I really like Coit. I like him a lot. He's fun to watch. And if he had broken the record, it would have been amazing. But the fact that the record stands is fine with me. I mean, the dude was on blanking fire. 30 in the first half. And he only took 14 shots. That's insane. Stanford Steve next.
Is the back. Beck steps up, delivers downfield, and intercept good! Jamari Sharp makes the pick that will clinch Indiana's first national championship.
Ugh, I wanted Beck to go down and win the game like he did against Ole Miss in the semifinals. A really good, I thought, compelling national championship game last night. 27-21 Indiana, 16-0 for Kurt Cignetti's bunch. Indiana is a national champion in football. Joining us right now, Stanford Steve from ESPN. He was there last night. You might still be there. I don't know if you're home. Are you back yet or not?
Oh, no, Kevin. We got TGL tonight in Palm Beach Gardens.
Oh, shoot. I forgot about that.
Big one. Big one. Come on.
All right. At Stanford Steve 82 on X on Twitter. Of course, part of the best show on television, Game Day, and the 1A best show on television, sports television, the Scott Van Pelt Show. I can put those in a different order. Scott's first, Game Day second. I don't want to get yelled at. So you were there last night. I'd like to start with this. It seemed like a split crowd on TV. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I compared it, to being at the SEC championship where it's 50-50 and whatever happens, no matter what happens on any certain play, half the place is going crazy. I would give it, if I had to give a lean, probably 60-40 Indiana. But it really was split. I mean, it was hard to tell, Kevin, early on because we stayed in Aventura, which is directly east of the stadium. Like we weren't down in Miami or anything, so I couldn't tell like what it was going to be like. You knew Miami was going to show up, but everybody lives there and they just show up right before the game. That's how they do it. In Indiana, I mean, it was just packed and droves of people outside the stadium still looking for tickets. So I would say it was 60-40 Indiana.
Stanford Steve's record, by the way, on Game Day in the postseason, 8-1, 6-0 so far in 2026, 7-0 if you count the teasers that you've given out on the show. So I loved this football game. I thought it was a hard-hitting, intense game, start to finish. What was it like down on the field watching it?
Well, I go back to this, Kevin. Before the game, I'm walking the field, and I'm just like, you try and take it all in. This. I knew it was going to be a special one. When you think about all the stories, right? Mendoza's dad playing with Cristobal, not being recruited by Miami playing a national championship back at their home stadium, like it used to be when we were young. It felt like every time they won one of these. Indiana trying to cap off the undefeated season. I went back to my youth. Like, think about how many guys that won the Heisman Trophy. Back then, all we got to see him was in the last game of the year. Maybe it was a national championship, but it was a monster bowl game, and it was all different circumstances, right? Guys, took the accolades and listened to all the pats on their backs. They didn't play well in that game, or they finally were playing against a team that was better than them. Like all those times, we've seen guys fail in that situation. And I'm just thinking about Mendoza and what he has, the pressure that's on him with trying to cap off this historic season against Miami. And then Tom Brady walks in representing the Raiders. It's like, holy hell, man. Like, how much is going to be on this kid's plate? Can he respond? And did he ever? He got whacked around, Kevin. I mean, they brought the wood to him early on, which I thought would happen with a Cristobal team, trying to set the tone, trying to get him off his mark. And the kid kept getting up and battling and getting back up off the ground. I couldn't be more impressed with what that kid brought to the table. And I thought what was really cool was just hearing Cignetti, explain, Indiana's a national champion. And then you see the guys rally around. Like, that's what it's about. That's what people want in a quarterback. They want everybody on the team, no matter where they're from, what year they are, to gravitate towards the quarterback. And I'll tell you, man, like probably LSU with Burrow because of how good he was, and he was a transfer also. But it doesn't happen as much where everyone on the team rallies around this quarterback and loves their quarterback. And boy, did he show out last night on the biggest stage.
I mean, you talked about him taking a beating. I mean, they really got after him. I mean, Miami was lucky not to be flagged at least once. There was a major cheap shot, the one that bloodied his lip. And Cignetti was not happy at halftime. He talked about them not – I don't think it was 3 that they missed, but it may have been 1 or 2, 1 for sure. But I kind of loved the way Miami went after him because they didn't feel that in the game against Bama. Either of their first 2 games. And I'm sure you talked about it because you're the one that convinced me early on that Miami was a national championship contender because of how good they were in the trenches. And they really did set the tone. Penalties really were were the killer for Miami in the first half.
And that's why I worried about trusting them and that, to win the game. I just thought about how balanced Indiana was, how smart they are, least penalized. But then the confusing, like when I went back and I watched the Big Ten championship and the Cotton Bowl, right? Ohio State's the common opponent. Miami was more impressive when playing Ohio State. And, you shouldn't take all your, apples out of the basket with what we see in one game. But I just had that in my mind. Like, they made Ohio State look worse than Indiana did. And you saw Signani, post-game, first thing he says, we couldn't protect our quarterback. And it was doing it with minimal guys. And I got to talk to Brian Haynes, the defense coordinator for Indiana, after the game. And he was still just, like, in awe of what had just transpired. And he's best friends with Heatherman, the Miami DC. And he's like, he kept trying to tell me all year, and his guys, he was wondering about him. He's like, he's got studs, man. Look at what they did to us. So Indiana knew they were up against it. I thought Pat Coogan was great, the center, saying it's the best defensive line he's faced in his life. And, they just had to bow up and figure out ways to get stuff done. And I go back again, Kevin, to the Indiana skill guys on offense, man. I've said it since I went to Eugene. They're way better than people give them credit for. I think Cooper's an elusive guy. Surratt obviously has done what he's done. And then that Becker kid, man, like what a role. Like he reading and talking to guys, like he basically was shown the door when Signetti came in. And he's like, I still think I could play here. Like had multiple conversations with Signetti. He's like, all right, well, you're going to earn your way. And he was just a special teamer all the way to the Penn State game this year. When Surratt was out, he makes that catch before Becker. Before Cooper makes the game winner. I mean, everything is earned. There's nothing taken for granted, and that's what's really special. I mean, he's a quirky dude, but I'll tell you what, man, his guys respond, and he puts them in the helmet. And I'll tell you what else, Kevin, there were some gutsy calls last night made. And his guys, it was – I said he lined up. When he burned the timeout, before the touchdown run, obviously, I'm like, well, he's not burning a timeout to see if he could draw him off and move back for a 5 for a field goal. Like, he's going for this. And then he explains it and says they had the play they wanted, and they executed, man. I thought there were some big time joints. I thought Cristobal was up against it. When they kept getting stopped and he finally had to go for 4th and 1, I still don't know if he got there, but it advanced the chains and ended up being a missed field goal drive, I believe. But I
couldn't believe he went for that, and I didn't think they'd make it. I think the replay, I think he did get it just barely. But that if you miss there, I mean, we've been dealing with, 4th downs in teams' own territories in the NFL now for, an entire month. And there's a difference between aggressive and reckless. And in that particular moment, I'm curious, did you feel like if they punted it back, that was going to be a problem, that they had to at least get a 1st down out of that drive?
But I just go back to, what if they don't get the 4th? That's how I always look at it. Like, what happens if we don't get the 4th down?
Yeah.
Is it monumental? And you still were getting it. And like after all that, with the kids suspended and the missed field goal, like it's 10-0 at halftime. And I thought Miami did a great. You saw a difference in their attitude to start the second half. You're like, all right, this game is on, and they might win it. But just
that first drive of the second half, you're right. Like there was a tone, and I thought they were outstanding defensively in the first half, but they got that player back, and then they had that 3rd and 17 face mask that was just a killer. But then they got him back into another 3rd and 17, or 3rd and super long, and their defense in the second half until Indiana made those 4th down conversions. Gave him a chance, but I thought Beck in the offense played great in the second half too.
Yeah, they found their legs. I just going back to the attitude change. Like the second, I couldn't understand. Like we're making a big deal of this Frederic kid not playing the last couple of games, and he's playing 15 yards off. Had no interest in tackling guys. I'm like, what's the big deal here? Then they come out in the second half with their full secondary. Then they played. They moved up. They played press. And then I thought, again, Signetti has every answer. I thought the big third down, because it was the first one where they could possibly get the ball back was when they hit Cooper on the motion and then he ran the out to the sideline, to Miami sideline. That's a big time play, because that was one where they totally mixed up Miami in coverage, and he comes clear off the two verticals. And I thought that was the monster conversion.
Yeah, it's 24-21 if they don't get it
in their bag. Yeah.
Yeah.
He just always has an answer in his bag. It's really impressive.
I think the sequence of the game for me, it happened before, the touchdown run by Mendoza and some of the plays, some of the, fourth down conversions and even that third down conversion. Malachi Toney fielding the ball at the 3-yard line on that punt was a massive mistake. And ultimately that punt block was a killer because you said it. They came out in the second half and they were the better team, in that third quarter. And they looked like that they were going to storm back. And that blocked punt, even though they had opportunities afterwards, that was a killer. And I thought you have to put it on Toney, who's great, and he's a game breaker, but you can't field that there at your 3-yard line, right?
I totally agree. The other thing, too, Kevin, going in the press conference with Beck after the game, he admitted he was kind of woozy. He got wrecked on that personal foul on the last drive. And I'm firmly convinced he thinks he has what was that, Marion or Daniels down the sideline for the interception?
Marion.
I think he just doesn't have enough. He can't get enough on the throw. There's no pressure. He saw it. It was the wrong read because I thought Herbie drew it up great. It was new that they put in that the safety. That's why the corner undercut it, because he had the safety help over the top. Beck just catches and throws that. And he just doesn't have the same velocity on it. So I think he did get dinged on the personal foul to start the drive, and that ended up costing him big time.
You know what? I talked about that, and I was texting back and forth with my old producer Denton, who's a huge college, and I said, I think he's not right. He was on the ground for about 15 seconds, and I'm like, oh my God, is he out of this game? And you could see he was a bit glazed over,
Yes. Because after Signetti calls the timeout, they put the camera on Beck, and usually every quarterback hey, we got a chance to go win this game. Let's get fired up. He had shown some juice early on. You could tell he was frustrated with some of the play calls, and he just had that dead stare in his eyes. And I really wonder if he was 100%.
I mean, they would probably never say it, but I am curious to know because he was so great in the Ole Miss game. And his story, for me, is one of the best stories of the college football season with the way he played and drove them down the field against Ole Miss for the win. And by the way, I thought he played great against Ohio State. Not great against A&M. He didn't have to do much against A&M. The touchdown pass was a touch, shovel pass behind the line of scrimmage to Toney. But he's gonna have to eat that. He's gonna have to live with that forever. They'll remember the semifinal, but I thought they had a really good chance to win it, and that was a terrible throw.
Yeah. Also, I saw a stat, Kevin. He lost 6 games in his career. I think he's 37-6.
Yeah.
37-6. 4 of those losses, he threw a pick on the last drive with a chance to win the game.
Oh,
that's a tough one.
Well, you understand this, and some of the listeners don't. But after the Ole Miss game, I said I was rooting so hard for Carson Beck because most hardcore college football fans before that final drive were convinced that he'd make a mistake and blow it, and he didn't. And they were convinced last night probably on that final drive, except they had the knowledge that he had done it in the previous game. And then he did what he's done before, as you just described. It's too bad because his story's been an interesting one. I actually think he's got a shot at the next level. Do you?
I do. Again, as we know, and as you've covered forever, it's all about the situation that he goes to. He's – you got to be pretty buttoned up front. But as far as reading defenses and stuff, I think he's going to be ahead of these guys that maybe have the higher ceiling. What also was really full circle last night with that last drive we had never seen Indiana in that instance where the defense had to get a stop. It's always been Mendoza in the offense, either closing out a game or going down for a score. We hadn't seen that defense come up big, and that's the other thing. I just thought it just felt like an old school game where you have NFL talent on the defensive line, but neither of those teams play a lot of guys, Kevin. Like both defenses were toast as far as endurance wise, because I mean they were trading paint right from the beginning. So it was a big time play needed by Indiana secondary, and they got it done. But both those defensive lines they left it all out there, man.
If Washington gets to 7 in the April draft, and Bain, Bailey, and then I'm going to throw in a third one, Jeremiah Love, all three of those players are on the board, and the general manager has the directive to draft the best player available, who would you take?
Oh, wow. Because I've seen it in that uniform, I feel like Bain has that Jonathan Allen vibe where he doesn't care about all the BS. You know, he's not going to have the tie like a Chase Young had from being around in the area and trying to please everybody and getting caught up in all the distraction. He just has a business-like approach. And talking to Jason Taylor, he absolutely loves the kid. He said he's an old school guy. He wants to be coached hard. He doesn't mind guys getting his face. And I think Mario has done a good job of bringing guys in that can do that. So I don't see Bailey or Love being there, but I do see Bain being there, and I wouldn't have a problem. The only factor, and Pete, you're going to hear this, you know, we heard it last year with Will Campbell with arm length and arm size. And then with defensive linemen, it's the word twitch. You know, Cignetti talked about, facing all these twitched up guys from Miami and Oregon, but he doesn't have that. He's just brute strength.
Bailey does, though.
Oh, yeah, Bailey does. Bailey's a lot lighter in the butt, though, too. And I think that heavier frame plays better. But I just do wonder, you talk about Mesidor and Bain, there's a lot of miles on those tires. So I think you got to be wary of that. But I think Bailey has a chance to wow more people with the combine stuff. And I think he's gonna go top 5. But I would not be upset if they don't take Bain. The other one, the other guy that I really want to see translate, and I think he's going to go higher than he might, than he should, is Caleb Downs.
Yeah, I was going to throw him into the mix. Yeah. Yeah, and
he's as good of a football player as there is in the sport. I just wonder now. I mean, we see a little with Sanger still, who still I believe has a role. But I wonder about those guys that don't have elite speed when you're facing that. The way the hash marks are and how much more ground you got to cover at the NFL level. About doing that more side to side, because those guys love cheating up and playing in the run game. But the guys on the outside are so much faster than they are in college, and you can't get caught cheating. So it's there's a lot going on, but he's got a great mindset. Saban said the world of him. I mean, basically quarterback on the field for his defense as a true freshman. So you know what you're getting there. But he's another guy that's going to be talked about plenty.
Talking to ESPN Stanford, Steve, what did Mendoza prove last night to all of those NFL scouts, including Tom Brady, who was there scouting, I'm sure, for the Raiders who have the first pick?
That he's worthy of number 1. I don't think the ceiling is going to be high as other guys, but when you factor in the idea of the Raiders, the Jets, I put the Commanders in there. You need ample amount of players. You got to get players. But I believe in what he can instill. Throwing wise, he could do it. He's smart as heck. I love hearing him talk about how, his preparation and why that gives him so much confidence and how he prepares. Talking to old, guys that coach him at Cal, they think the world of him. But I think you feel pretty good after what he's put on tape and what he brings to the table. I don't see him getting caught when, stuff off the field and stuff like that, which is desperately what a team like the Raiders needs. So I would feel good. They don't have a coach, right? They don't have one yet?
No,
we got 3 openings. So I think that's
we got
really,
more than that. I think we've of the 10, 4 have been filled. 5 have been filled. I forget. I've lost count.
Is there 10? Holy cow!
Yeah, after they fired McDermott, it
Gotcha.
ended up being a total of 10. So last one, it's just on Cignetti. It's actually 2-part. 1, what do people in the sport think of him? And then 2, do people in the sport think that what he's done there is repeatable somewhere else?
I think he's only won over people in the sport that don't know him. When you look at his approach and his belief and what he's instilled, the only way this can happen nowadays is if you get full buy-in. And I'm talking about coaches. I'm talking about players' parents. I'm talking about the players and the fans. And what he's done in doing that is way harder than you realize. Because, I thought it was cool with the JMU guys that came with him last night talking about the couple Indiana guys that stayed last year. And the Indiana guys being like, hey, you guys take over. You know what we're getting into. How hard are these postseason workouts going to be? What does he expect, in the off season? All this stuff. And that stuff was instilled. Now, he had, a generational group of kids that came with him from JMU. And Saban made the point on game day last night. He's like, I'm sick of hearing that they don't have any 4 or 5-star guys. They're 4 or 5-star guys now.
Yeah.
He developed them, So I just think you have to be wary. I don't think he gets enough credit for the time he's put in, talking to coaches that coach for him, and the idea of player evaluations, right? And what he's done, like the Mendoza deal. He told family last year, not this past Christmas, the one before, Mendoza was going to tell him that he was going to decide Christmas Day. He's like, I didn't sleep all Christmas Eve. He knew what he was up against with other teams and bigger teams, that had more of that landmark program. But the way he's identified guys and really taken the time, and even admitting to using AI in recruiting, where he's looking at lower level guys and throwing in all this stuff into a formula, and it gets him to say, a pool of 20 guys, it gets him down to 8. And then he dives in on the 8 and sees, what he wants. The way he's coached guys to be versatile. That linebacker core has had injuries. The defensive line, they lost 2 starters this year. The Daly kid was their best kid that got hurt celebrating for the Big Ten title game. The way they interchange guys has been so crucial because, like I said, they don't play a lot of guys. So the way he's just had this just enormous umbrella over thing that instills confidence, but demanding a heck of a lot from your players is unmatched. And I think it really showed out. And that's what's awesome is the non-flashiness, but the business-like approach where, they're still having a heck of a lot of fun. But there's an approach, and they put the strain on you for 60 minutes because they're going to make less mistakes than you. There's no doubt about it.
Josh Hoover from TCU committed to Indiana next year. Really good season in Fort Worth, and Indiana is the all too early ESPN.com #1 team in the country for 2026. That surprised me. Did it surprise you?
No, we were actually talking, we had all our analysts there. It was actually fun just to get, guys you just see on TV all year. And we started just spitballing things out. And Indiana came up, and I'm like, wow, is that real? Because I absolutely love the kid he got from Michigan State. I think Nick Marsh is an NFL receiver right now. I like him better than Cam Coleman. So you got a 1-2 punch there. But I couldn't help I've never been a fan of Notre Dame, but hanging around with Marcus Freeman, man, that guy is so buttoned up and good. I think that team's going to have a lot to be heard from. Obviously you got to have Ohio State, the quarterback with Hoover and what that, comes in. I actually like the idea of Indiana being number one because now Cignetti's got to change that approach of not having, lack of disrespect or, all the disrespect. It'll be fun to see how he treats that one. But I have no issues with Indiana being up there.
Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it. And what are we watching tonight again?
Oh, TGL, Kevin. Come on.
The golf league thing.
We should have Tiger in the building too, which will be fun.
Okay.
Did you get any early sniffs to the conference championship games?
I mean, no one's going to bet Denver, right? So I probably would be on them plus the points. Don't you think?
Oh, it's like I'm right.
I mean, who's going to play Jarrett? What public bettor is going to back Jarrett Stidham in the AFC title game?
I'll tell you this. It's a dangerous thing with Sean Payton and knowing what he has. If he could ever win this game, because I go back to how crazy he could think and how great offensively he is, he could come out in a whole new offense with 2 weeks to prepare for a Super Bowl. A whole new deal that defense, whoever he faces, is going to be like, where the hell did this come from?
Exactly.
No, it'll be it. The scenes in Denver and Seattle should be freaking awesome. I'm fired up for that.
I'll talk to you later. Thanks for doing this.
You got it, my man. Have fun.
ESPN Stanford Steve. When we come back, there's one game from the weekend we have not talked about, and that was the last game on Sunday night, the Rams and the Bears. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
with in motion. Williams drifting, sprinting for space, in all kinds of trouble, putting it up for grabs to the end zone. He got it! For the touchdown! They've done it again!
The play of the weekend. There was a controversial play of the weekend. There was an injury of the weekend. There were 2 games of the weekend. But that play by Caleb Williams, how many quarterbacks on planet Earth could make that throw? Seriously, 3, 4, maybe? What a football game on Sunday night between the Bears and the Rams. We have recapped the other 3 during the course of the show. We will finish up with what I thought was just an incredible football game for a number of reasons, but I'll start with this. I mean, the whole scene at Soldier Field. Appreciate these games because there's going to be a day, and it's not that far off, where they're going to be few and far between trying to find a game that was as cinematic in terms of the snow and the swirling snow and the lightly covered field and the cold and the players at the line of scrimmage, like Packers, from the 60s NFL films, with just the breath being smoked out from everybody on that line of scrimmage. It was pure theater. It was awesome to watch. And then on top of that, you got a game that was tight start to finish. It was really a spectacular scene for a playoff game. All 10 playoff games so far have been outside, and the 2 this coming weekend are outside. I have not looked to see whether or not the forecast for Denver or Seattle is problematic. I would guess not, because all of the weather will be on the East Coast, and that typically is an indication of what it will be out west. Not always. But I loved the football this weekend, and it was the perfect game to end with. So I'll start with Caleb Williams in this game. It's really impossible to not be super impressed with his progress this year. He had 2 playoff games, both at home, in which he legitimately strapped the team to his back in the fourth quarter, leading his team to a victory last week against Green Bay and nearly pulling it off against the Rams on Sunday night. Now, here's the thing with Caleb. There's no doubting his arm. There's no doubting his playmaking ability. There's no doubting his overall athleticism. For me, it's like when I watch him, and the statistics bear this out, is he makes the hard stuff look so easy, and he makes the easy stuff look just too difficult. When he's in the pocket and there's a clean pocket and the play's within rhythm, he's throwing 100-mile-per-hour fastballs high and out, and inside. He's missing the easy stuff over and over again. That's why he's got such a low completion percentage for the year. But when you get him on the move, he's deadly, accurate, balls placed perfectly. It's thrown with touch. I mean, in watching that last throw, I made this note that he's actually better throwing off his back foot than he is with his feet set. That play was just there. How many times do we watch football? He's going backwards 25 yards. There's no chance that they can score on that play. I did not think it was offensive pass interference either. That was not an egregious shove. You don't call that. The interception in overtime, the third of the game for him, in listening to a lot of the, analysts that at least I think know what they're talking about, it does seem to be a bit of a question mark as to whether or not that was just a bad decision, bad throw, or whether or not it was more on DJ Moore, the intended receiver, than it was on Caleb, because maybe DJ Moore needs to flatten out that route cross face with Cam Curl to protect the football. But I think he thought the throw was going behind Cam Curl. And then there are people out there that just say, look, this is a tough play for both quarterback and receiver. They're not on the same page. And then on top of that, Cam Curl, yes, that Cam Curl makes a phenomenal play. It obviously saved the Rams' season in the moment, would ultimately prove to have been a season saver. Caleb Williams was. I'm going to talk about the Bears next year because there seems to be a theme that they're the Washington Commanders of this year and they'll fall flat on their ass next year. We'll see, but I will comment on that in a bit. But overall, the Bears played a much better overall game than they did against Green Bay start to finish. They were much better defensively throughout the game. But I thought some of the Bears' defensive success actually was on Sean McVay. I don't know why it took until the fourth quarter for the Rams to run the football more. Through 3 quarters, the Rams called 36 pass plays and 11 run plays, and they were running the ball well. And the pass plays weren't working very well. They struggled in the drop-back game. Stafford was being pressured over and over again. He got sacked 4 times. He was forced to throw quickly a number of times. He completed 20 of 42. This is a 65% passer during the regular season. He was 48% in this game. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was the injury from last week against the Panthers. But I thought Sean McVay's insistence for 3 quarters to throw the ball cost them a chance to win the game a little bit more easily. In the fourth quarter and in overtime, he called 19 runs in just 12 pass plays. Now, there was one play in which I thought he should have called a pass play. I thought Sean's play calling through the first, he admitted it, by the way. Afterwards, he said, I didn't call a good game. And by the way, play callers have games in which they don't call good games and they don't feel the game as they should. It's easier sometimes for, others, not fans necessarily, but others that really know what they're watching. To me, it just seemed obvious. Why, when you're running the ball well against the 28th ranked run defense, why would you drop your quarterback back as great as he is? He's an MVP, and as great as Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams are and the tight ends are, but it's not working. And you keep punting. You keep giving the ball back. He also really struggled with clock management down the stretch. I mean, he cost his team dearly at the end of regulation. I'll get to that in a moment. But when they had the ball up, in that game, 17-10, and they had the 3rd and 10 after Ben Johnson called a timeout with 2 minutes and 7 seconds left, should never call a timeout with 2:08 or less left, especially before a 3rd down. It's free license to throw the football without it harming you. They can't run 40 seconds after that play, after a run play. So you don't call the timeout there. You call it with 2:10, 2:15, 2:20. So Sean has a free license to throw the football with 2 minutes and 7 seconds left, and he runs the ball on 3rd and 10. A first down ends the game. And he ran it and punted it. Have no idea why. Then, wow, this is basic 101 clock management. You're in a game in which you're up 17-10. The other team has the ball. The other team has just 1 timeout left. And the other team needs to score a touchdown. Now, once they got into your territory, which was pretty quickly, they're not going to run out of time. You have to use your timeouts on defense in the event that they score. There's no downside to using the timeouts. If they don't score, you're going to be able to knee the game out. They have 1 timeout, but once you get below a minute 20, you're good. You'll knee the game out on 2nd and 3rd down. And he didn't use any of his final 2 timeouts on defense. And therefore, when Chicago scored on the ridiculous throw by Caleb Williams to Cole Kmet to tie the game, there were 18 seconds left instead of about a minute left. He should have had a minute left to go win the game in regulation. That's just clock management for 12-year-olds playing Madden. That's terrible. A horrendous job by one of the most respected coaches in the league. I got to tell you that over the years, I love the Shanahans. I love the Shanahan tree, but they're not the best when it comes to clock management. They're not great at it. Kyle has never been great at it. He's okay. There are worse. Sean's been pretty good, but there are better. He made terrible mistakes that nearly cost them the game. Now, how about Ben Johnson after the touchdown? I bet 90% of the people that are familiar with Ben Johnson in Chicago thought he was going to go for 2. Because with 18 seconds to go, it's essentially going for the win. When you go for 2 with a minute to go, 40 seconds to go, 30 seconds to go, you're going for the lead. You're not going for the win because the other team's going to get the ball back if you convert with a chance to still win the game. 18 seconds in that weather on that field is kind of like going for the win. So anything less than, say, 25, 20 seconds is going for the win in that spot. He didn't go for it. And you know what? I thought he made the right decision. And he was asked about it afterwards, and he said, we had struggles inside the 5-yard line on goal-to-go situations, and that influenced my decision not to go for 2. I think that's exactly the way I felt their drive before they got stopped. And on that drive, I mean, they had to convert a 4th and 4 in the red zone at the 14-yard line, a Hail Mary, basically. He backed up to the 40-something yard line and threw a Hail Mary. So to put that game on one play where the odds were probably against you converting, I think would have been silly and reckless rather than aggressive, because they actually had started to wear down the Rams defense. The Rams defense at that point was on the field for nearly 80 plays. So I thought he made the right call. And look, without that interception in overtime, maybe they do end up winning that game in overtime. They got the stop right off the bat. So I agreed with it. I just thought that it was a terrific game. I'm glad the Rams won the game. I'm a Ben Johnson fan in terms of scheme and play calling and the whole thing. I just thought what he did last week against, the Packers and Matt LaFleur in the locker room, barrage is a bit much. He's very impressed with himself. There's no doubt. And the fact that he had the literally no professional couth in Washington, being on a plane heading to interview him, and then he cancels with them in the air, is just kind of low-rent professionalism. With that said, he's a hell of a coach, but I was rooting for Sean McVay and the Rams. I wanted to see the rematch with Seattle. That game was the game of the year, the Thursday night game in December, and they were able to pull it off. I have one other thing on the Bears, because there seems to be this narrative coming out about the Bears that, look, it was such a good luck season, and it was the Washington season from 2024. Everything broke their way. They got super lucky, and next year, first place schedule, it's going to be a disaster. Well, Washington actually didn't have a first place schedule this year. They had a tough, brutal schedule, but it wasn't first place because they didn't win the division last year. They were a wild card team and won 2 playoff games on the road, in case you had forgotten. But I'm not buying that. The Bears have a much better overall roster than Washington had. They've got a real talent offensively. They're legit offensively. And we knew that when Caleb got drafted. We knew that they had talent offensively. Their offensive line is outstanding. And then, look, DJ Moore may have blown it there, but he had a couple of big-time catches. I'm a big Luther Burden fan. I wanted Washington to draft him. Their 2 backs are outstanding. Monangai looks like perhaps a star. Loveland looks like a star in the making. They got 2 great tight ends. It's just a completely different supporting cast on offense. They have better defensive players. It's not a great defense, but they have better playmakers. They certainly took the ball away a lot this year. So I wouldn't count the Bears out next year just because they got lucky this year. And in Caleb Williams, man, you saw the talent. You're going to tell me that in year 2 with Ben Johnson, that some of that easy stuff that he makes hard, he won't improve on? Great football game. Rams 2.5-point dogs at Seattle, and the Denver Broncos without Bo Nix now 4.5-point dogs at home against the Patriots. First blush on both of those games when we come back. Championship weekend features two good ones. I mean, the rematch between the Rams and the Seahawks. That game, that 38-37 game, was absolutely insane. Don't forget, the Rams dominated Seattle for the first 3.5 almost quarters. They had a 16-point lead in the fourth quarter, 30-14. We had that unbelievably ridiculous 2-point conversion play by Seattle. You know, the first game they played, the Rams against Seattle, the Rams ended up losing that Thursday night game 38-37 in what was truly one of the great games of the last few years in the NFL. Absolutely crazy. That first game, remember, was the Rams winning at home 21-19, but in that game, Sam Darnold threw 4 interceptions in that game, and yet Seattle only lost by 2. So you've had a game in which the Rams kind of dominated and lost. And then the other game was Seattle kind of dominated and lost. I don't know what we'll get. I kind of like the Rams. I kind of like the Rams to go in there. I still trust Matt Stafford a hell of a lot more than Sam Darnold. There were still a couple of plays in that San Francisco game, and they were never in any sort of risk of even having that be a game. They were just a much superior team to what San Francisco had, which was crumbs compared to their, opening day roster. It's amazing what the 49ers accomplished this year, but they had no chance against a team like Seattle for 2 straight games. But there were still a couple of those plays where Darnold held it a little bit too long and almost took a ridiculous sack or almost threw a bad ball. That he can't do that against the Rams. Cam Curl will make them pay. He'll make them pay. I just trust, coach quarterback combo. I'll take McVay Stafford over McDonald and Darnold. The Seattle defense, though, man, is nasty. But let's not forget the Rams put up 37 on them in their last game. 37. An insane football game in overtime, the 38-37 game. In that game, the Rams had 457 yards of offense against that Seattle defense. So, yeah, really looking forward to the NFC Championship game. The AFC title game, I would not count Denver out. Their defense is still exceptional. Drake May's put the ball on the carpet, on the field, now 7 times in 2 games. And they've lost, 3 of them? 4 of them now at this point. He cannot do that against Denver's defense. Denver's defense is really good. The Patriot defense is so good. So, obviously, Drake May, quarterback, over Jarrett Stidham. But Mile High, Denver Air, Sean Payton, he can coach them up, man, the quarterbacks. I give Denver a shot in the AFC title game. All right. Done for the day. Do want to mention Window Nation's deal right now is buy 4, get 4 free. I mean, you can't beat that. And you don't have to pay anything for 2 years. No money down, no payments, and no interest charged until the year 2028. If you've been thinking about new windows, think now. Do something now, because the cold weather, Doug Kammerer told us earlier in the show, may last right through March. You're paying too much on your heating. So call Window Nation today, 866-90-NATION, or go to windownation.com. Mention my name. They'll come out. They'll give you a free in-home estimate. They won't pressure you into anything. Just get the estimate if you've been thinking about new windows. I promise you're going to work with one of the best customer service companies out there. All right, Chris is next.